All right, well, we are starting a brand new study tonight, and it is, dun, 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 Esther. Okay, so we got, so if you were with us when we did, I think it was last year sometime, I did the Jewish festivals. You got just a little preview of the book of Esther because we talked about the Feast of Purim, which is, based off the events of Esther. So you got a little preview there, but you're going to get the whole enchilada this time, probably of about 11 or 12 weeks worth. So there was a couple of sheets out there that you should have picked up. One is your normal Bible study sheet, and the other is a map. On one side, it's a map. Now it's a cool map, okay? Because it's a map of the Persian Empire, and on the top of it, the top map is what it would have been in ancient times. All right, and then this bottom map is an overlay. It's the same map, but it's got an overlay of it of locating where this would be in modern times. So we're dealing in Esther. The setting is where? What ancient empire was it set in? Persia, right? And so that would be modern day what? Iran. That's right. Now, if you look, it's set in the capital city of Susa. So if you look, it's over in. You see the big print that says Elam here. See that? Right below that is Susa. Now that you can see that's in modern day Iran. In some studies that we've done, I've been able to show you really cool pictures of here's when I was over in this part of the country and I took pictures of it. I have, it's a little difficult to get to Iran and, do some Polaroids, that's kind of, so I'm doing the best I can with what I've got to work with as far as pictures. So I do have some pictures that I will show from time to time, some video that some hardy adventurers that are, braver and stupider than me that have shot over there, from time to time throughout our study. But it's not going to be like our Life of Christ study where every week I'm throwing a half a dozen pictures. Here's me in Iran. Here's me having coffee with the Shah. I know it's not going to have that, but anyway. Dave Stott hadn't been over there either. But I did find a video of some people that went in and saw what was supposed to be the tomb of Esther and Mordecai. So at the appropriate time in our study, I might show that to you. On the back, you've got a nice little breakdown of the various Persian kings. Now this is helpful not just for Esther, but other kings, other books that are set around the time of the Persian Empire. Books like Ezra and Nehemiah, maybe Daniel, some of those kind of things. So you can see, but we're dealing with the king Xerxes I, who reigned from 485 to 465. In some translations, you're going to see it Ahasuerus. They're one and the same. At least most scholars think that it's the same guy. So that's the area that we're dealing. That's the time frame that we're dealing with there. All right, so let's kind of set up as being the good Bible students that we are. We're going to start a brand new study of a book of the Bible. What's one thing that would be helpful to know? Who wrote it? So who wrote the book of Esther? Yeah, we don't know. Some suggestions are that Mordecai wrote it. Some suggestions are that Ezra, the priest, wrote it. There's no really good tradition as far as church tradition or historical tradition as to who the author is. He remains unknown. It's a mystery. It's kind of like the book of Hebrews. Only God knows who wrote it. That's kind of Esther. Who wrote the book of Esther? God knows, and he may be the only one at this point that still does. What must be something else that would be helpful to know as we start to study this book of the Bible? Yeah, when it was written. Yeah, y'all are really good at following along in my outline, aren't you? That's good. So, when do we think a good date for writing of the book of Esther would be? Now, you can, that can vary widely, depending on if you date it early or you date it late. If you date it early, you're going to date it shortly after, that you're going to say it was written shortly after the events of the book took place. Or if you date it late, I've seen it dated as late as like intertestamental time. In other words, between the time of the Old Testament and the New Testament. I tend to lean more towards an early date. That is to say, I tend to think that it was written shortly after the events of the book took place. So, events of the book take place mid 400 BC. So a good round ballpark date would be what? I'm going to say about 400 BC. That's not exact. I don't know. Nobody's salvation is resting on it, but I'm going to date it around 400 BC. Now, what's the setting of the book? Where is the book set? It's set in Persia, and what's going on in Persia? Who's the king of Persia? So we get a guy. If you go ahead, let's go ahead and turn to Esther, and that we'll be working from text. I'm working out a New King James version, and we've got the king is named Ahasuerus. Now, history doesn't necessarily know him as Ahasuerus. He's known as Xerxes I. He reigned from 486 to 465. He's actually assassinated in 465, so he doesn't have a long reign. Just to kind of give you a little perspective, Zerubbabel rebuilds the temple in 515 BC. And Jews are now permitted to go back to Judah. Go back home, go back to Jerusalem. But up until this point, many have not. Some have gone back, but many have not, especially on the eastern side of the empire, which is where this story takes place. Why not? Well, because you've settled down. You put down roots. Your family is there, perhaps. Your home is there, and so if you've been in a certain place for a long time. Maybe people like Esther. I'm sure she was probably born in Persia. So go back home. Well, what do you mean go back home? I am home. I don't know. I grew up in Texas. But, it's been so long since I've been actually in Waxahachie that don't really feel like home anymore. And I don't tell nobody, but Oklahoma's starting to feel like home. You say Used to, I mean, you say we're going home, that meant let's go back to North Texas. Now if you say we're going home, that means we're going back to Claremore. I mean, so that's kind of the idea. They had, so you got a temple that's built. You've got in Jerusalem, you've got people that are, you got a decree that is letting people go home, back to Jerusalem, but you don't have large numbers of Jews going home. Not yet, anyway. That comes down the road, but not yet, anyway. So that's kind of the setting of what's going on. Where, what's taking place when the curtain on Esther opens. Now, some major themes of the book of Esther. One is God's providential care for his people. God's providential care for his people. That God is in control and he's taking care of his people. Number two, evil's victory is only temporary. And I think that's good to hear in our day and age when it seems as though evil is winning the day. But evil's victory is only temporary. Three, God has a person for every situation. God has a person for every situation. And you may be that person. God may have put you in a certain place for such a time as this. Four, themes of like courage and duty. Things, a message that we don't hear a lot in our world today. Those traits of character that we admire and seem so rare in our world today. Courage and duty, those are the things that come out in a book like Esther. And then the last one is this: pride goeth before the fall. There's such great irony in the book of Esther. People ask me sometimes, Brother Martin, do you think God has a sense of humor? My answer to that is I don't know that God necessarily has a sense of humor, but he certainly has a sense of irony. And we'll see that as we get to the end of the book. And evil Haman is swinging from the very gallows that he has constructed for the good Jew Mordecai. So there's all of that. Second one is evil's victory is only temporary. The third one is God has a person for every situation. Okay, so I wanted to kind of convey some information about the book itself in the introduction, and I thought the easiest way to do that would be kind of some true or false questions. So here's some Esther trivia. You just answer true or false to me. True or false? Esther is one of only 7 Old Testament books not quoted in the New Testament. That's true. Anybody want to guess what the other 6 are? You said, no, you're no fun. Take a shot. Anybody want to take a shot? Job? No, Job's not one. Not Ruth. Here we go. Obadiah is one. You got Obadiah is one. Yes, you got one. No, not Malachi. So you get 2 more books that are set in Persia: Ezra, Nehemiah. You get Nahum, and then you get 2 books that sometimes scholars aren't really sure what to do with. One being Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, all is vanity. Anybody want to take a guess at the other one that almost didn't make it in the canon of Scripture at all? Song of Solomon. Yeah, Song of Solomon. Obadiah, yeah. So the seven would be, counting Esther, you got Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah, Nahum, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, and Obadiah. All right. True or false? Esther is the only book in the Bible named after a woman. False. What's the other one? Ruth, right? True or false? Esther is the only book in the Old Testament that doesn't specifically mention God's name. That's false. So there's actually three more. You got Esther, you got Song of Solomon, you've got Lamentations, you've got Ecclesiastes. Old Testament books that don't specifically mention God's name. And yet, here's the thing. God's hand is all over the book of Esther. Like, you can't read the book of Esther and not see God in it. And yet God is never mentioned in the book. Well, 4 counting Esther. So, Esther, Song of Solomon, Lamentations, Ecclesiastes. True or false? Esther is the only book in the Old Testament with Persia as its setting. Well, it's kind of true in the sense that, like, Nehemiah and all is actually set in Israel. It's during Persia time. It's the only book that's set in the location of Persia. It's not the only book that's set during the time period of Persia. It's the only book that's set in the territory of Persia. True or false? Esther is part of a collection of Old Testament writings known as the 5 Scrolls. That's true. That's true. So what they would do is they would keep these 5 books. They're all short books, and they would keep them on one scroll just because it's more convenient that way than opposed to have 5 little scrolls. You got one scroll that holds 5 little books of the Old Testament, and these books were special because each one was read at a different festival or holiday of Judaism. Now, we're talking about Esther, so we'll start with that one. Esther, that's an easy one. Which festival would it have been read at? Purim, yeah. Purim. Now, anybody want to take a guess at the one of the other 4? First of all, tell me what other small book would have been in this. Lamentations is one. Now, Lamentations is a little tricky because it's not read at a feast day. It's read on a fast day. And anybody want to take a guess? You're going to tell me Day of Atonement, and that's not the right answer. It's the 9th of Ab, which commemorates the destruction of the temple. So that's Lamentations. You got 3 more. You want to take a guess? Ruth is one. Now, what feast do you think Ruth would be read on? You're answering them all. Don't. So yeah, it's Pentecost. Now, answer me this: why Pentecost? Am I shooting way over everybody's head tonight? So it's there. You go. Yes, it was the time of the barley harvest. Ruth is said at the time of the barley harvest. So Pentecost is a harvest festival. So you read the book of Ruth there. 2 other ones. Ecclesiastes, that other little short book that keeps popping up. You're going to read Ecclesiastes at the Feast of Tabernacles. Why Tabernacles? Right. And so what the whole theme of the book of Ecclesiastes is all of the pursuits of life are meaningless. The only thing that matters is serving God. And so Tabernacles is a time when you basically go out in Jerusalem and you build yourself a little temporary shelter and you camp for a week So, I think I would like the Feast of Tabernacles because, you just get to, cease from your labors and go camp for a week in Jerusalem. I think that'd be really cool. And you read Ecclesiastes. The other one is Song of Solomon. Now, tell me what feast you think Song of Solomon would be read at. It may not be the one you think. No, it's a Jewish festival. It's one of the big ones. It's the one that Jesus was crucified during. Passover. Now, why would you read Song of Solomon? Of all the books, why would you read Song of Solomon at Passover? Song of Solomon is a book about, be careful how you answer that. What? Love. That's right. That's what it's about. It's about love. And what is the Feast of Passover all about? God's redeeming love. First, to the nation of Israel in the Exodus, and ultimately his redeeming love through Jesus Christ. So that's those 5 books, and they were all on one scroll. Now, Esther was traditionally read at the Feast of Passover, true or false? False. It was read at what? Purim. And true or false, Esther is the only Old Testament book outside the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, to give the origin of a Jewish festival. True. That's true. All right. Very good. How'd you score? How many passed? All right. The 9th of Ab, and it celebrates, or not celebrates, it commemorates the destruction of the temple. All right, questions on the introduction, any of it? That's just a quick introduction. All right, let's dig into the text then. Look at you can't wait, ready to get started on this adventure, huh? All right, here we go. Verse 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. This was the Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, or we're going to call it Susa, which is how it's known today, the citadel, that in the 3rd year of his reign he made a feast for all his officials and servants, the powers of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days in all, and when these days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in Shushan, the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. Now we get a description of the king's palace. Listen to this. There were white and blue linen curtains fastened with cords of fine linen and purple on silver rods and marble pillars, and the couches were of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, turquoise, and white and black marble. They served drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from the other, with royal wine in abundance, according to the generosity of the king. So, in other words, it was a fancy affair, for sure. Verse 8, in accordance with the law, the drinking was not compulsory, so the king had ordered all the officers of his household that they should do according to each man's pleasure. In other words, drink when you want, as much as you want. That's what that basically means. Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, meaning what? He was drunk. He commanded Mehuman, Biztha, and Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zithar, and Carcass. That's easy for me to say, huh? 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. Okay, so the story starts. The curtain opens to a Persian king named King Ahasuerus. Who was he? When did he reign? We said he's probably the king that history knows as who? Xerxes I. He reigns from 486 to 465. Now, this story takes place during his third year. So if he starts to reign in 486 BC, that means that our story is going to take place when? 483 BC, 3 years after that. His father was Darius. Darius I. Darius I had conquered a great deal. Now, some things that have taken place shortly before Xerxes comes to power that's going to come into play. So you've got, if you look back up to Darius I, and you look over in the events and accomplishments. So you see Xerxes I, and then you go one ahead of that, okay? What I want to point out first of all to you, there's a lot of building projects that take place and all that. He's building a palace and all that. But at the time, Persia is the most powerful nation in the world at that time, in the time of Darius. And it would seem as though they were invincible. But shortly before Xerxes comes to power, they lose a key battle to the Greeks in an area, in a place called Marathon. Now, you ever heard of that? We get the race that are run. I started saying that we run. We don't run it. Although we have a church member that does run marathons, Ryan. Ryan Alexander I think he ran did he run the Boston? He was going to run the Boston. Hadn't run it yet, but Houston and Chicago. God bless him. I'll stand on the side of the cheer. But that battle takes place 490. So what does that say? Well, in the back of everybody's mind now is, wait a minute. Persia is not invincible. They can lose. They can be beaten. And then so Xerxes comes to power 486. So there's that. Now he had inherited a lot of territory, a lot of wealth, but he had done very little to earn it. And that's a very dangerous thing. You have someone come to power, come into leadership, who inherits a lot and has done very little to earn any of it. He is ripe for a fall, we might say. Now, if you notice when we were reading through these verses, that he has this feast of 7 days, but it comes at the end of this 180-day exposition, if we want to say that. He showed, verse 4, he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days, 6 months. So if you want to think of it as like a World's Fair, they don't really do World's Fair anymore. But I've seen pictures and watched documentaries like the Chicago World's Fair or the great London World's Fair, or whatever it may be. I think the Eiffel Tower was built, for a World's Fair. So basically, Xerxes is having a World's Fair. Now, he owns the world pretty much, so everybody's coming from his empire. And they're coming now. Why would he do this? Well, he is in about 3 years, he's going to go to war with Greece and this time try to make it stick. And he's going to have some success and not success, and he's going to, out of this time, around 480 BC, it's about 3 years from where our story is set, you're going to get the battle of Thermopylae, which, if you're familiar with the history, the story of the Spartans and the 300 and all that battle is going to take place just 3 years from now with Xerxes. He's going to lose a major naval battle. It's going to, the power base is going to start to shift, a little bit from Persia to Greece. Now, Persia's still going to be in control for a while, but they're going to start to suffer some defeat, and it's going to come at the hands of Xerxes. So he's having this, he's planning out this war. If you're going to plan a war where, a lot of people very well may die, what do? You throw a great big party and you get all your generals on board and you get them all drunk and you say, yeah, this is what we need to do. Let's go to war. Let's flip them Greeks, and so that's what this whole thing is about. And at the end of it, he throws a great big party, and the wine is flowing freely at that point. Now, let me just kind of, to give you kind of a little bit on Xerxes' pride. This comes from a foundation stone in the Persian capital of Persepolis that was found. This is what was inscribed. I am Xerxes, the great king, the only king, the king of all countries which speak all kinds of languages, the king of this entire big and far-reaching earth, the son of King Darius, the Achaemenian, a Persian, son of a Persian, an Aryan of Aryan descent. Thus speaks King Xerxes. These are the countries in addition to Persia over which I am king under the shadow of Ahura-Mazda, over which I hold sway, which are bringing their tribute to me. Whatever is commanded them by me, that they do, and they abide by my laws. Media, Elam, Arachosia, Urartu, Dragiana, Parkia, Aria, Bactaria, I can't do all these. Sogdia, Chorazmia, Babylonia, Syria, Satagidia, Sardis, Egypt, the Ionians who live in the salty sea, and those who live beyond the salty sea, Malta, Arabia, Gandhara, India, Cappadocia, Daan, the Amerindians, Sumerians wearing their pointed caps, and the Sudras, and the Akupish, and Libya, and Banishu, and Cush. He had it all, man. He was. Now this is what he puts on his foundation stone of his temple. So you can see we got a little bit of pride going on here. Just a little bit of pride. Now, what was the situation of the Jews at this time? What's going on with the Jews? Right. They are slowly returning. So they're still in exile for all intents and purposes. Conditions are somewhat better than they had been during the reign of Babylon. And this is around the time that some have started returning. There's still not a lot that have returned, but people are starting to make their way back. So, how would you describe the royal family in Persia during this time? Fancy, proud, extravagant, pagan. How about dysfunctional? So King Xerxes, he gives his banquet, and Queen Vashti, she decides to throw her own banquet. Now maybe this was okay with the king, but he doesn't seem like he's too on board with it, because he wants her. I want you at my banquet, and she's doing her own banquet. So a little bit of maybe competition, unhealthy there. The name Vashti means what? It's going to play into the whole story of Esther. The name Vashti means beautiful. It means beautiful. Now the irony is that Queen Vashti, Queen Beautiful, is going to be deposed in favor of Esther, who was even more beautiful than Queen Beautiful. So Xerxes says, he's drunk with his friends, and he's like, hey, go get beautiful. Hey, beautiful, come on over here. Let everybody see how beautiful you are. And she says what? No, I don't think so. So this is what one commentary said on this whole deal with the banquets. The third year of his reign was 483 BC, which was what we said, 3 years before his famous expedition against the Greek mainland. Rulers used banquets to display their greatness and help maintain the faithfulness and loyalty of their subjects. Herodotus, which is a historian, described Persian royal banquets at which the king gave gifts to his fellow Persians. It is said 15,000 might be his guests, and the royal chamberlain afterwards had the duty of putting his inebriated master to bed. How'd you like that job? Wouldn't that be fun? All right. Now, the king, he asks, or commands, we would say, for Vashti to come before the king. She says no. This was a big deal to the King Vashti, and also to his right-hand men here. Why was it such a big deal that she didn't appear before the king? He's the king. What did you say? Yeah, it makes him look bad. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know. When you're raising your kids, isn't that like the number one rule? Like, don't embarrass me in public kind of deal, It was that kind of deal. She made him look bad in public, for one thing. And the fear was, if the king's wife doesn't respect him, then nobody's wife would. And all other women might follow her example. That's why it's so important that Lisa always obey my commands, because, some of these other wives might get the idea that they don't have to obey their husbands either, right? So you better just step two, hon. So, Queen Beautiful. Yeah. But now let's turn the shoe on the other foot. You tell me why you think Vashti might not want to appear at this banquet. Okay. All right. So, why did he want her? Let's start with that. Why did he want her to come? What was the purpose of her coming? She was like the proverbial trophy wife. Hey, I've got a beautiful wife. In fact, she's so beautiful, her name is beautiful. Come here, hey, bring Miss Beautiful out here so all these drunken, crazed soldiers can see her and ogle his wife. Now, one commentator said that some scholars had said that it was even, more lewd than that he tells the eunuchs to bring her wearing her crown. The idea being wearing only her crown. In other words, she would be naked. Now, I don't know that you can derive that conclusively from the text. But at the very least, he is trying to put her on display and say, you know, look at me, I've got a beautiful wife. Look at my beautiful wife and think me, you know, better because my wife is beautiful. And she didn't feel like she wanted to participate in that. Let me ask you, ladies, would you want to be put on display like that in front of a bunch of drunken soldiers? I'm guessing most women would not. So she refused. And that is going to set up the entry to Esther into the story. And her relative Mordecai, and so that's when the story really begins to take place. But we got to get Vashti out before we can get Esther in, and that's what sets this up. Questions on those verses? All right, so in what ways can you already see God at work in this story? Right. You know, before we can get Esther in, we got to get Queen Beautiful out. So, you know, we've got her out now. That opens the door for Esther. Also, you see this element of pride. Pride is going to be a theme through the whole book. We're going to see it in the king. We're going to see it in Haman. And pride is going to lead to downfall. And maybe even a little bit in Vashti. Maybe a little bit of pride in Vashti. I mean, her husband was the king after all, and she says, I ain't going to do it. Maybe a little bit of pride even there. So pride plays through the whole thing. What do you hope to get out of this study? Or is that what you want, is just to get out of this study? All right. Well, good. Hopefully by the end of our study you will know more about Esther for sure. All right, I told you I don't have any cool pictures, but I do have a 3D reconstruction of the palace at Susa that I think you will like that. So if we can catch the house lights and then let's watch this brief little video. It's only about a minute, but try to picture what Esther might have seen when she saw the palace at Susa. So that's pretty impressive thing. It's Esther would have overwhelming. I could only imagine a little poor little Jewish girl the first time that she sees this. Now I told you that I had a surprise for you, right? So here comes my big reveal to you first by Wednesday night crowd. This is what you, if you so choose.
To Sight and Sound Theaters in Branson, Missouri.
Hang on. Let's get it. Actually, can we get it on the screen?
to Sight and Sound Theaters.
Don't listen to any of that. Here we go. Now we're rolling. Okay, now watch it.
Coming to Sight and Sound Theaters in Branson, Missouri.
We feast in the grandest city in the world! Let all beautiful, unmarried women throughout the empire be brought to the king's palace!
You made it alone, Mordecai. They are taking them whether they want to go or not.
Her life changed forever when she entered the palace doors.
You can't tell anyone you're a Hebrew.
Why?
It's the only way we can keep you safe.
What's your name?
My name is Esther.
Prepare the crown.
Now, with a crown on her head and a secret in her heart, can she find the courage to trust in God's plan?
All Jews throughout the Persian Empire are sentenced to death!
I'm afraid for her. She's stronger than you think.
God has a plan.
There is an enemy. You have a choice.
My king, my life is in your hands.
Experience this captivating tale of beauty and bravery as it comes to life in the original stage production.
The Lord is still with us.
Perhaps you were made for such a time as this.
Queen Esther, live on stage at Sight and Sound Theaters in Branson, Missouri.
Okay, who thinks that sounds like it might be fun? All right. We're going, we have a date set. I mean, it's not locked in stone, but it's pretty set. April 12th and 13th. We'll go up Friday, April the 12th. We'll see the show. We'll spend the night in the hotel, and we'll come back Saturday, April the 13th. We have done this a couple of times before. We went to see the Jesus play, and then last year we went to see, I guess it was actually in 22, we saw the Christmas one at Sight and Sound. Those two times, we were able to get the cost at about $100 per person. That included your ticket and your cost of the room, double occupancy. So with double occupancy, you're looking at about $100. I haven't priced it out yet, but I expect it to be around there. I mean, it may be, 110 or something, but it will be close to that. I don't have a sign-up sheet out yet. I'm just giving you the information so you can mark your calendars and save the date. You get a little bonus and perk by being here on Wednesday night. So you get first-hand information. So, Sunday morning when somebody says, I really wish we could go see that Esther play, you can say, I know something you don't know. So, all right. Okay, so that's what we got for tonight. That gets us kicked off into Esther, and we'll pick up in verse 13 next time. Any questions or comments before we close? Yes, sir. Yes. Yes. Yeah. All right. Let's close in a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this study.